It's the Cannon Sports Podcast. On today's episode, we're joined by international basketball pro and the founder of Statham Academy, Taylor Statham. Welcome in, everybody, to the Cannon Sports Podcast from Golden Valley High School here in Santa Clarita. I'm Phil George with Cannon Sports. We have Taylor Statham here, 6-year basketball pro. He's got significant playing experience in 12 different countries worldwide and the founder of Statham Academy. Taylor Statham, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
So Golden Valley High School, this is a special place for you. You played here, and I believe it also serves as a base of operations for the Statham Academy. Do you want to introduce everybody to what you have going on with that organization?
Yeah, so actually 2 days ago on Sunday, I started my very first youth league. As you know, I'm involved heavily. I have an AAU program that's been around for about 6 years. Very big training program. We have over 200 players within both programs, throwing camps year-round, events. But this is the first time we're throwing a youth league, so it was very important to me. Come back to my alma mater, the school that kind of raised me and helped mold me into the player and person I am today. And just, you know, this is kind of the base of operations for those development players and for players who are just getting into the sport and getting ready for, you know, that next step into AAU or high school.
And you founded the academy while you were still an active collegiate basketball player. Why did you place such an emphasis on aiding in the development of younger players during your own development as a high-level player?
Yeah, it was really important to me to give back. For me, even as a young kid, I remember always telling my parents that I wanted to go on and do all these extravagant, amazing things with basketball so I can open doors for other people and I can help lift everybody with me. And my mom still brings that up to, you know, until today. Even when I was like 8, 9 years old, I was like sitting there doing interviews in the mirror and things like that. But honestly, at the time, I had broken my foot going into my senior year, so I had a lot of free time. And my brother had just entered high school. He was going into a sophomore year after breaking his arm, and he had a good shot at varsity. A few of my friends were going overseas. And then a couple local kids, you know, reached out, asked for some help. And so, you know, I just want to give back the knowledge that took me so long to learn, you know, because as you go through basketball, you just learn quicker ways and more efficient ways to get better and cut out the excess fat and kind of focus on the things that you really need to work on to make it to that next level.
So on a whole, what would you say is the mission of the academy? What's the composition of the people that make it up? Is it for the elite of the elite, or is it just a little something for everybody who's just looking to get better no matter what level of play they're at?
Yeah, it doesn't matter what level. 2 summers ago, I was working with 70 pros. So I would have pros in and out of the gym all day. And then you come to the youth league and you see 140 brand new kids who've mostly never played basketball. So, you know, I'm trying right now to put all of my coaches, I have a great staff, great people around me, just put them in place. So whatever you guys need, it's like a one-stop shop. And as you kind of maneuver through your path and get better and, you know, want to get more and more prepared for that next level, it's like, all right, we have coaches, we have, you know, just this family atmosphere that's just going to help you guys grow, you know, because a lot of kids, like so many kids, they start out playing city league and they're stifled by parents or, you know, just kind of held back because it's a dad coaching. And we just want to make sure right off the bat that these kids are getting the best coaching and having the most fun they can, so they become passionate about the sport. Because once you become passionate, it's very easy to work hard.
You're obviously speaking from experience of when you came up through the youth circuit and high school ball. I'm sure player development was much, much different then. Can you touch on sort of the way that landscape has evolved?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's so competitive, and honestly, it's almost like a necessary evil, you know, especially with the camps, the AAU, it's just nonstop. It's year round, you know, and for kids, it's almost too much. So if you don't have the right people in your ear telling you, hey, it's time to rest, it's time for you to step away from basketball, maybe you need to try out another sport just for a couple months so you feel that hunger and you miss it. And then so also you're just getting to different movements and you're less likely to get injured. But yeah, now it's completely different. I mean, kids are trying to play in tournaments every single weekend. When I was coming up, I didn't even play AAU until I was like 16. And it was just me and my dad working out every day. And when he wasn't there, I was working out. I was playing grown men. And now you don't see a whole lot of kids going out to parks, finding people to play, and just kind of getting out of their own bubble. You know, that's why a lot of kids are, you know, very robotic, and they look great in drills and they can make a million shots, but they get in the game and they freeze up because they're not used to having people in front of them and used to having those instincts and having to make those decisions.
So I guess you could call it increased professionalism of youth sports. You don't necessarily think that's as good of a thing?
I think it is if you're with the right people. Like I know a lot of groups who really do it well. I think because, I mean, there's no entry. Like, you don't need a degree to become a coach. You could just say, oh, I'm a coach, and make an Instagram and make some really cool videos, and, you know, tell some pro players like, hey, let's work out. And then, you know, you look the part. So a lot of people are going to come to you. But yeah, I feel like it's great. I feel like it's great that kids have access to all these resources. It's just about utilizing each resource the way that they should to maximize, you know, their potential.
And you've specifically taken an interest in bringing in and mentoring kids from the Santa Clarita Valley. That's obviously where we are now, where you played. There's tons of great basketball talent in California and nationwide. But why did you specifically want to focus on this area?
For me, it was just so important because coming up, we didn't have trainers. We didn't have big-time AAU programs. We didn't have anybody to help us when we were good enough to be recruited. And that's what hurt the most. Like, I went on to college, and I was very lucky because I had my dad in my corner. But even at the time, you know, once I got to a certain level, he didn't know the ins and outs of AAU and how to maneuver and what camps to send me to and showcases. And, you know, we just got very lucky. But a lot of kids who could have played in college didn't get the opportunity to. So I always wanted to come back and make sure I did everything in my power so that never happens to another kid again.
And you have been quoted in some media talking about the sports culture of the Santa Clarita Valley. No NBA players have come out of here, but a good amount. That's right. We'll get to some that you think are on the horizon. I got one in mind in particular. But you had some NFL guys: Matt Moore, Kyle Bowler went to Hart up the road, and MLB. You have a bunch of pitchers: Trevor Bauer, Tyler Glasnow, James Shields among them. What do you think what do you think is missing from specifically basketball in Santa Clarita?
I feel like kids just didn't have the right mentors coming up. I feel like I was so hungry and I put in so many hours that couldn't be replicated. And I used to say that as a player. Even if I took years off of basketball, guys wouldn't catch up to me because I put so many hours in that they couldn't replicate. But was I working on the most efficient things that I should have? Did I get the most out of my athleticism? And the answer really is no, because I made all my mistakes learning. I did months of doing the wrong exercises, did months of doing drills that I really didn't need to. But if I had someone like myself or like Coach Travis, Coach Ron, all these guys who are out here now, you know, my ceiling would have been so much higher. So going into these NBA workouts that I was so fortunate to get, instead of going in there bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, happy to see Magic Johnson in the corner, you know, see all these NBA trophies, you know, I would have known, like, hey, I should have been conditioning. I should have been doing everything I could. So I'm making, you know, 90 out of 100 threes in front of these scouts, you know, hour 3 into the workout when I'm dead tired off the move.
And those are the things that you picked up through your own development, the lessons that you learned, maybe kind of learning them the hard way that you're trying to impart onto the kids that you're coaching.
Definitely. And then just, you know, playing the places I have and meeting the people I have and being able to connect. You know, I don't want those relationships to just be useless. You know, I want to make the most of all these relationships. I want to be able to help these coaches and give them a player so they're like give them a kid like Andrew Meadow, you know, have him go there. And then every single year after Andrew Meadow, they're like, all right, who's the next kid? You know, like for so long, it was so hard to get any kids to go to college. Like all the really good players from out here who ended up continuing playing, they would go to junior college, you know, and then eventually kind of sizzle out. But yeah, like once I started playing overseas, it was easy for me to just call guys I didn't know, kind of tell them what I do, and then automatically there's that respect factor and say, hey, I have a kid who just scored 2,000 points, you know, in his high school career. He's all state, and now it's very easy, you know, to open doors like that.
So you've obviously had a number of talented players come through here. Can you tell us about a couple of times that you've really made a profound impact in someone's life and you've actually seen the results of that?
Definitely. I mean, I feel like at almost every level, there's he actually coaches for me now, Chris Jew, one of my guinea pig players that I started with. You know, I met him when he was 12 years old at an AAU tournament and just saw this very undersized kid who ended up being 5'6", Asian kid. Most people just look at and they're like, oh, he doesn't play basketball. You know, he ended up progressing and finally getting, you know, well over 10 D3 scholarships. So an opportunity to play at the Division III NCAA level. And he wouldn't have had that. You know, even in high school when he was a junior and senior, a lot of people overlooked him and, you know, there wasn't many options for him, but he just kept working, put his head down. Zach Phipps was another kid. He was like one of the kids I was talking about, had almost 2,000 points, was all CIF. And he's another guy. He had no options. And then, you know, I make a few calls for him. He starts working with me and all of a sudden he has D2 offers, NAI offers. He just finished his senior year at UC Merced. Ashley Alnay, the same thing. She was going to go to COC or Cal Lutheran and pay for school. And then within 2 months, all of a sudden, she signed to Cal State Fullerton, you know, all 4 years paid for. And then eventually, when she wanted to transfer, we got her a scholarship so she'd be able to play her final year and get her master's degree. You know, Noah, he ended up playing at Chicago State, and he was a guy who didn't even start in high school. He was a guy who didn't even start when he was at a junior college. And the list goes on, but there's a lot of local kids who all they needed was that little spark, you know. And sometimes I get a little crazy because I want it for them so bad, you know. But in the long run, as long as I get them where they should be, that's, you know, all that matters to me.
Yeah, and I'm sure the networking aspect is another big reason why the Statham Academy or any sort of skills academy appeals to a young player. Obviously, you go there. The initial reason you go there is for the high-level instruction, but the connections that you make as well. One leads to another, leads to another.
Definitely. I actually just came back from New Orleans, the Final Four, and literally just bought a plane ticket. I got invited to Ryan Silver's Final Four party and ended up at like 3 or 4 different, you know, just little gatherings, mixers, networking with coaches and, you know, guys I've never even met and some pretty big-time guys and, you know, gave them info about what I do and, you know, they loved it, sent them a few of my players. So now they're talking with a few of my players. So, you know, all it is a conversation, but it takes a little bit of getting outside of your bubble and doing the norm to open up these doors.
You mentioned a couple of minutes ago a player named Andrew Meadow. One of the very first conversations you and I ever had, you were really excited. You said, you got to look this guy up. He is the real deal. You think that he could be that first NBA player out of the Santa Clarita Valley. Let's let the world know. Who's Andrew Meadow?
Man, Andrew Meadow is the most underrated player in the nation. He's the most efficient player playing high school basketball right now. He's 2-time All-State, 2-time Player of the Year up here, and he hasn't even reached his senior year. He has about 13, 14 Division I offers.
Which school's he at now?
He's at West Ranch High School. So he's 6'7", white guy, long hair, goggles. He has this unique look. But the kid is just a gym rat. Like I tease him all the time. I'm like, the amount of work that you've put in from age 10 until 16 right now, you've worked out more than most pros have because he's literally been with me every single, especially since I came back from Indonesia during the pandemic. He's with me literally every single day, working out once, twice, 3 times a day. Kid's a gym rat, you know, and he wants it. And for me, I'm so fiery and I feel like I'm so passionate about basketball. And he's the one person that can match that, you know. And it's special to see at such a young age. And he's not overly confident. He doesn't let anything get to his head. He's always hungry. He's humble. It's just hard not to root for him, you know.
And even at such young of an age, he has already some significant overseas playing experience, right?
Yeah. So yeah, during, you know, all those the COVID years kind of blend in, but somewhere in there towards the end, during Christmas break, I had Israel's national team fly him out. And he'd never been to Israel, never been outside the country. And he went and they were just blown away. They were speaking in nothing but Hebrew. He doesn't speak Hebrew, right? So They show him the plays, you know, they hang out with him a little, and then day 2 they play a little tournament. In the tournament, he averages like 18 and 12, which in Europe is like, you know, 26 and 14 out here. But yeah, and they were just blown away that he was just, first of all, shooting over 50% from the field out there, especially since overseas is much more physical. You're allowed to sit in the key. You're allowed to smack the ball off the rim if it's on there. But also that he learned the plays and he understood them in Hebrew, even though he doesn't speak them. And he was running them perfectly, you know, in 3 different positions.
Yeah, and one thing that you just said that I think is really important to stress is he got that opportunity not because he was Israeli, he's not, but because of connections that he made through the basketball world here.
Yeah, definitely. So I actually I was like networking with an Israeli agent, and you know, we were working out and I was telling him about it, and he actually mentioned to me how his parents are both full Jewish, and I had no idea at all. And so, you know, I just went on to ask the guy, hey, there's this kid, he's Jewish. Would there be any way that we could get him out there? And I sent him the tape, and it's, you know, him dunking and hitting crazy threes against some of the top-ranked players. And immediately he was like, oh, I'm sending this to the national team. And then within a couple hours, he sent me screenshots of the national team like, hey, we got to get this kid out here.
Before we go ahead and get into your personal story through playing basketball and athletics, one more aspect of the modern player development operation that I want to talk about is personal branding and social media. That, I assume, was not something that was huge when you were coming up, but now you've got high school athletes having tens, hundreds of thousands of followers on Twitter and Instagram. What impact has that had on the youth sports scene?
It's just crazy that kids who barely play basketball know exactly who Mikey Williams is, exactly what he does. There's a girl, Isabella Escribano, who plays for our travel team, Stay Jiggy Izzy. She's pretty big on Instagram. She has well over 100,000 followers. And it's pretty crazy when kids come up to me who I have no clue who they are at AAU terms asking me if Izzy's playing today. But yeah, I mean, everything's just, you know, one click away. And these kids are on their phones so much that it's just such a great marketing tool and way to advertise if you use it right, though. Because a lot of kids, you know, they put things on there that college coaches don't want to see.
Well, I was going to say the double-edged sword is, yeah, everything's one click away, but everything is one click away. So what advice do you have for young athletes who, you know, really are starting to get that exposure and want to learn more about how to manage their own personal brand and social media?
I would say keep it as professional as possible. And obviously kids are young-minded. They don't know what professionalism is yet. So talk it over with your parents. Try to find people in your area who are in a light like that, who can mentor you. And then talk to some PR people, because, I mean, look at the kind of money that some of these kids are making. It's ridiculous. Like, one kid transferred to the University of Florida the other day I saw, and he's making $860,000 a year on top of a house and a car that he gets with it just to go to school. You know, so the game has completely changed now. And if you do it right and you create a following and you give people a story and you get people excited and, you know, show that you're a leader and somebody worth following, of course those things are going to come.
Do you have any examples you can point to of prominent athletes that most of our viewers would know of who's doing it right on social media?
I would say most college, like if you just follow college athletes, I feel like they all do it right, because they're under such a microscope that as soon as they post one dumb thing, I mean, their coaches are blowing them up. The administrative people are blowing them up. So for me, if I was to look at anybody, it would be college athletes. I can't think of any like high school kids off the top of my head. Maybe like Amari Bailey. You know, Bronny James is pretty good with that. I just thinking of him because Andrew plays with him, and everything that they post is just.
Andrew plays with Bronny?
Yeah. So he's actually on Strive for Greatness. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to, especially. Unfortunately, my Lakers are out of the playoffs, but it's pretty cool to see LeBron on the sideline and getting excited for Andrew and, you know, coaching him up and talking to him. So I mean, that's priceless.
I'd love to be a fly on the wall for that conversation. What advice has LeBron given to Andrew?
Just talking to him about picking his spots, you know, shots he could get to, and then just advice how to carry himself on the court, things like that. I mean, coming from somebody that great, is something that can't be supplemented.
I want to go ahead and get into your basketball career, and I think it's appropriate to go back and start in the year 2010. So from a basketball standpoint, where did things stand for you at that time?
So in 2010, when I was at Westwind, we were the 5th ranked prep school in the nation. We had a national schedule, so we were traveling a lot. It helped my recruiting tremendously. During just the first 4 or 5 months I was there, I gained 35 pounds of muscle, got a lot faster, improved my game a lot. We were playing in front of ESPN, playing in front of Ball is Life all the time. So that was pretty spectacular to start.
And you were getting some decent D1 looks. Who all did you have interest in from that time?
So the ones that I was going to visit were like Western Michigan, Pepperdine, Fresno State, just off the top of my head. But during that time, I had probably 24 to 26 offers between D1, D2, NAI.
And in preparation for playing at the college level, you were given some advice to be more physical, take more charges, and that ended up being some pretty good advice, although maybe not in the way that you envisioned. What happened?
Definitely. So when I was playing in this gym at Golden Valley High School, I was just like a typical white guy in the corner, just catch and shoot. Was pretty much just a shooter, and I was pretty slow at the time, and that's why Pepperdine actually told me to go to Westwind. When I was at Westwind, I was around the top players in the nation. Some guys who were just mean on the court, like grown men on their way to the NBA. So very quickly, I had to adjust my game and get more physical, get stronger. And then, eventually I started taking charges. I took a charge one day in practice, got hit, and then it showed an underlying tumor. So at the time, I didn't know what it was. I was just in excruciating pain for like 3 weeks until my mom finally made me go to the doctors. And then, they told me I had a tumor, and then just started the snowball effect of things.
And at the time you got that news, obviously at that point you were all basketball all the time. And when you got that news, where was basketball in your mind at that point?
Basketball was like the number one thing I was worried about. But once I found out it was cancer, I was more worried. Like I didn't want other people to worry for me. I knew, I don't know why. Maybe I was just delusional at the time, but I knew I was going to be fine. I knew it was just some adversity to overcome, but I didn't know how bad it would be, those following months once I started doing chemo and had to step away from basketball.
What were those months like for you, both in terms of your recovery generally and being away from the game?
So at first, they told me I had to go get the tumor removed. And I was like, dude, we're going to Vegas next week. I have all these D1s lined up. It's in front of ESPN. I was like, I will go as soon as that is over, I'll go. And then so I went, I averaged like a triple-double, got all these big write-ups on ESPN. So my stock went way up. I went to the doctor. They said, yeah, it's definitely cancer. You definitely need surgery. So immediately I went into surgery. And then right after Christmas break, because this was like Thanksgiving break, right after Christmas break, I came back to Westwind in Phoenix. We played some of the top junior colleges, and I just came fresh off of surgery. I had a 30-point game against the #1 junior college. So, boom, schools are offering me again. And a week later, after that tournament, they called me and said, "Hey, your blood hormone levels are a little crazy. You need to come back for chemo, or it's going to come back." So I went home thinking like, okay, this will take a month. Fast forward like 3.5 months, I lost those 30 pounds I gained. I was throwing up every day, sick to my stomach, hooked up to an IV for 8 hours a day. Lost my hair, lost my eyebrows, lost all 20 plus offers that I had, and just like felt hopeless, And the only thing that kept me going at the time was basketball, and I kept thinking like, man, I need to get back. I need to get back, and I never stopped thinking that. And I was thinking like, what am I going to do now? Am I just going to go to school and go to a junior college and be I can't live a life like that, So yeah, basketball is what really, basketball and my family being so supportive is what really got me through that time and alleviated a lot of it.
Well, and those two, your family and basketball, ended up combining for that next step in the path forward. You ended up at Cal Baptist on a tryout. How did that come to be?
Yeah, so as soon as I was done with chemo, I wasn't allowed to play it because obviously I needed all these tests done. You know, it has such tremendous effects on your body. They told me I shouldn't play for at least a month. And as soon as it was done, I was in an AAU tournament like 2 days later. You know, I got invited to it. I was like, man, I got to get back in shape. That's all I kept thinking. And honestly, at the time, it was really dumb because if I would have...
You were playing in an AAU tournament 2 days after finishing chemo?
2 days after finishing 2 rounds, like 3.5 months of chemo. And just being like hooked up to an IV for 8 hours a day. And watching nothing but Charlie Sheen's meltdown. That's the thing that drove me crazy. Is like I'm going through all this stuff and I just see Charlie Sheen living this crazy life, doing whatever he wants and no repercussions.
I mean, is that really what you wanted to aspire to, though?
No. But I'm just like, man, God, what's going on, man?
Fair enough.
But yeah, so I played in an AAU tournament. My dad started calling some schools, and then every day I would just go to the gym and work out. But then again, it was like another roadblock. I went and got my lung test done, and they said I had so much severe damage to my lungs. And I didn't tell anybody this for years. Like even when I went to college, when I first went overseas, because I was afraid it would ruin, you know, an offer I had, or coaches would think about it. But they told me I'd never be able to play basketball again. And for me, it was just like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, what is, you know, like that's the only thing that got me through this, like that. And I was like, you know what? I'm not listening to this. And I just went on and I practiced every day, went to the gym. It's the only thing that kept me sane. Went with my 2 best friends. We played 21, 2-on-1, and got up shots. And I slowly got more and more in shape. And finally, my dad called a whole bunch of schools, every school you can find in California. NAI, D2, D1, told him my background story, what had happened, and pretty much just told him, like, hey, put this kid in a workout or an open gym. If you don't like him, just show him the door.
And what were the expectations for both you and them going into that tryout?
Well, I think for them, they just wanted to see, like, okay, this guy was on his way to play at the D1 level. Like, a lot of schools were D2 or NAI who were interested. Most of the D1s had already moved on and guys had signed. So they just wanted to see, like, okay, is it still the same Taylor that was at the 5th ranked prep school and playing with all these future NBA players, and it was the team captain and doing well. And then, yeah, for me, it was like my only hope. So I was literally going to do everything I could and die out there if I had to get a scholarship. And that's kind of why I got offered by Cal Baptist, because they just saw how hard I was pushing, and I was literally like throwing up on the court and still running full speed and doing everything and knocking down shots, and I couldn't even breathe at the time.
I mean, that experience of your cancer diagnosis, coming back from that, being told you'd never play again, and then playing in an AAU tournament 2 days after chemo, and ultimately culminating with the scholarship at Cal Baptist. What did that teach you about just about perseverance?
Yeah, I mean, it taught me everything. And like, if you know my parents are all about, like, hard work. You can push through anything, always do the right thing no matter what obstacles in your way. So just all those life lessons they taught me throughout the years was like, that was the test for it all. You know, I went through this crazy roller coaster of adversity, emotions, and finally it was like, okay, this is what I've been preparing my whole life for. Like, if I really want to do all these things I say, if I really want to be the first player out of Santa Clarita to play pro and come back and help all these players, this is my opportunity. Like, I have to make it through this level. And for me, it just showed if I can make it through that, and that didn't kill me and that didn't stop me, nothing will.
And you took that opportunity, obviously ran with it, had a successful career at Cal Baptist, transferred to CSU San Bernardino, and then obviously we're going to get into a little later, had a substantial pro career playing overseas. So, and that all started with a tryout at a D2 school at Cal Baptist. So my question to you is, obviously the circumstance of how you ended up in that position is an extreme, unique case, but there are a lot of athletes who, for one reason or another, they don't get that D1 offer that they're looking for. They don't necessarily get the big Power 5 school. And for those athletes, why is going the D2 route beneficial for them?
I'll put it like this, to be blunt. All my friends who went on to play D1 and I played D2 now ask me to help them with jobs. It doesn't matter what level you're at what time. It's a marathon, you know, and it sounds like everybody says it, you know, and you hear it time and time again, but it's not who gets there the quickest. It's not who becomes the best the quickest. It's who can sustain all the adversity that you know, kind of goes their way, because it's going to hit you one way or another. Even my friends who were 6'8" as freshmen in high school and were these prodigies, so people took them under their wing and then just had this path where they never got injured and they made it to the D1. They had a successful career. It's like, all right, well, once they hit pro, then adversity hit. And for me, taking that D2 path made me hungrier, and it made me want to prove more, and it kept a chip on my shoulder that I have until this day. And so I feel like because of that, nobody outworks me, and it kind of leads into my life, and it leads into my academy and everything I do outside of basketball.
So after your career at Cal Baptist, you ended up at Cal State San Bernardino, and from there, what did basketball look like from there? Were you getting NBA looks by the time that your career winded down there?
No, I wasn't getting NBA looks. I got an offer to the 3rd league in France for $1,500 a month, and I was like, this can't be it. And, you know, a few of my teammates, because we were so successful at Cal State San Bernardino, we made it to the NCAA tournament twice. We were nationally ranked 3 times. We won our conference. We won the whole West Coast region. We even like hosted the NCAA tournament one year. A lot of my teammates went on and like were instantly top league in Israel, top league in Germany, Greece, all these great places. And again, I just had to claw my way up. And luckily, I took a chance, and one of my friends, Jahar, who we talked about earlier, who I was helping when I had a broken foot, he helped me and he said, hey, come out to the Philippines. And I actually went on tour with this guy, and because I'm part Filipino, and teams in the PBA were looking at me at the time. And I went out there, connected with an agent, and then next thing I knew, I was playing in in their 2nd league, and you know, making way more money than I should have, and that's kind of what jump-started my whole career.
And that's just one of 12 countries that you've had professional playing experience. So forgetting basketball for the moment, what was it like just being able to spend those years traveling to all of those different parts of the world? I mean, you've had experience in Canada, China, Thailand, Indonesia, the Philippines. So basketball aside, I want to hear about that experience.
It was amazing, especially, you know, being American and, you know, not traveling too much outside the country because I was just so focused on basketball and all that as a kid. Just experiencing those cultures and seeing how other people live, seeing these great, you know, things that we learn about in our history books or we only see through pictures, and actually being there and indulging yourself in the culture, that is something that I feel like everybody needs to do, because it helps you grow so much in life. But yeah, even going to places like Russia, like I played in Russia, played in Qatar, you know, places I thought I would never, ever go. And it was honestly kind of like, should I go here? You know, is it safe? You know, not knowing, and then seeing, wow, how friendly these people are, seeing how beautiful it is. Those are memories I'll never forget.
Your grandmother is Filipino, like you said, and you spent some time playing over there. What's your relationship like with your grandmother, and how much of an influence was that in your decision to play in the Philippines?
It was huge for me, just seeing, you know, where she comes from, seeing where a lot of our family comes from. I'm very close to my grandma. She was here to help cut the red ribbon on the Youth League grand opening. But yeah, it was special for me because honestly, I wasn't in touch with that Filipino side at all. And just living over there on and off for 2 or 3 different years, and, you know, learning how to make their food, learning how to speak Tagalog, and then just getting around the city and making it a home, that was special for me.
And you declared for their draft last year, and you were designated for purposes of the draft as Filipino American. Now, I'm sure most of our viewers don't know how the PBA draft works, so explain why that's an important designation.
So just like in most countries, if you have lineage in that country, you count as a local. So most countries probably bring in 1 to 3 American imports. And usually those American imports, like years ago, I had an offer to Taiwan for some lucrative money. And last minute they pulled it and gave it to OJ Mayo. So those are the guys like fresh out of the NBA that you're competing with oftentimes if you're playing for good money in big countries. But as a local, now you're fighting for 10 positions on each team against their local players who, probably haven't played at the NCAA level, aren't looked upon as the American. Because when you're an American import, you're supposed to be like LeBron James. Like you come in, you average 20 or 30, 15 rebounds, and we win every game. Or you're going to get replaced by somebody who can. When you're a local, your job's a little more secure. So playing in the PBA, which is one of the oldest leagues and most established leagues in the world, probably one of the best fan bases, would have really been spectacular.
And you specifically wanted to play there to expose your son to the culture, right?
Definitely. His mother, my girlfriend Karine, she's actually full Filipino. She's not from there because that's what everybody thinks at first. But she's from the Bay. But yeah, just experiencing that culture and just him, seeing how the rest of his family has lived or what they come from, I feel like is huge for him.
And talking about the composition of the league and how American players or other foreign-born players coming over, they're supposed to be the stars in the league. How do you find the top talent from America and overseas? Obviously, here, if you're an NBA team or a college, you know where to look. You know where the top high school programs are. You know where the top colleges are. You know where to put out your recruiting feelers. But when you're recruiting overseas for the PBA, where do you look in America to find that top talent?
So generally, teams will have agents that they work with. They'll have a Rolodex of agents they work with. So they'll say, hey, this is what we need. We need a dominant center, kind of like Lester Prosper, who we had 2 years ago, to help lead us to a championship. He needs to be able to shoot. He needs to be able to rebound, like whatever, that role is that they're filling. And then from there, those agents will give them, hey, these are the players we have. These are players that aren't signed to us, but we're in contact with. And then they also go to people who can – so I consult for a lot of teams in Asia. And that's kind of what's helped me get players into Asia a lot. So they'll just use all their resources and network. And, hey, it's that time of the year. We need this type of guy. And then generally it's not very hard. The basketball world is so small. It's not very hard to find what you're looking for very quickly.
And – we just talked about advice for players who maybe didn't get that D1 offer and the opportunities that are available to them at the D2 level and NAI level. Similar question for players who have exhausted their college eligibility and maybe didn't get drafted or didn't get that professional opportunity. Why do you recommend maybe pursuing a career overseas?
Man, you only live once. If you're passionate about something, it's not always going to be guaranteed. So you might as well, run your race as long as you can and try to exhaust every opportunity that you can. And I think that's where a lot of guys fail is, especially in basketball and going back to AAU, how just kind of crippling it is for children is like, you're so used to switching teams and bouncing around and somebody saying, hey, come here, I'll give you shoes, I'll give you this, you'll play for free, I'll fly you around the country. Everything's handed to you. So then you get to college or high school, and it's so easy to transfer, and that's why the transfer portal is at a ridiculous rate. And now you're about to go overseas, and nobody's there to hold your hand. You're not an NBA guy. Nobody cares for you anymore. And you have to go out and network, and you have to do things yourself. And sometimes you have to invest in yourself and go on a tour or go out there and work out, for some teams or do your research. So I feel like that's really where people start to separate themselves. Is once the eligibility's up, it's like, okay, who's really a professional? Who has a resume? Who has highlights on YouTube? And you'd be surprised, like really good players will never play overseas because they don't. And some guys who aren't as good or couldn't even hold a candle to them are playing overseas in all these different countries just because they're not afraid to do research and send out a million emails and finally just get one door to open.
So do you think it's an effort thing, or do you think people just may not necessarily know where those opportunities are or how to find them?
I think it's both. if you want something bad enough, you're gonna go get it. You know, if you lost your job tomorrow, are you just gonna sit there and wait for somebody to come hire you? No, you're gonna be like, hey, I have bills to pay, I got family to feed. I'm gonna go do what I can and hunt for this job. And I feel like it's the same for basketball, especially at that level.
Right. And you're certainly not done playing yourself. You want to update us on what you have in the pipeline?
Yeah. So coming May 14th, I actually got invited to the Big 3 Combine. So I'm super excited about that.
And I think most people became aware of 3-on-3 basketball from the Big 3 as mostly an entertainment product, but really it's become a lot more than that.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. In 2019, when I was on the world tour with the Philippines for 3x3, we went to so many amazing countries, and it's huge. Like, if you go to Europe, it's year round. And honestly, 3-on-3 might be bigger than 5-on-5. I mean, they have these lucrative tournaments where, you know, if you get on a world tour, you're playing for $50,000 and you have 3 other teammates and you guys split that.
It was adopted into the Olympics.
Yeah, and now guys are playing in tournaments around the world. You know, if you're on a team and you have a sponsor, it's very easy. You may be in Mexico one week, the next week you may be in China playing. So the United States is a little slower to catch on to it just because we're spoiled with the best brand of basketball, with the NBA, with the NCAA. But yeah, now that it's an Olympic sport, I really think it's going to take off.
So 3x3 did not originate with Ice Cube in the Big 3.
No. He's smart, though. He saw an opportunity at the perfect time when it was about to reach the Olympics. Obviously, the USA didn't qualify like we were supposed to, but that's another story. But, you know, obviously as a businessman, he sees an opportunity, and you know, he's got nothing but ex-NBA. I mean, you have Allen Iverson, Joe Johnson, all these great NBA players who guys love, mixed in with guys like Frank Nitti, who's the Drew League MVP, mixed in with some overseas guys. So, you know, it's a great brand of basketball, definitely entertaining.
What are some of the other opportunities aside from Big 3 and similar leagues that are available for players who want to continue their development but maybe don't want to go overseas?
Continue their development as far as what?
As a player moving up to that next level.
Oh, like in the States, like I just got back from the ABA Nationals. It's a semi-pro league, so it's pretty big now. They have teams in, I want to say, like 30 states. The TBL is also a big one. Guys are getting paid decently for it. It's a semi-pro league, mostly in the Midwest and East Coast. So there's leagues popping up, and you know, they have more resources than they did 10, 15 years ago. So guys are traveling a lot. Like I just got back from Baltimore, you know, on Saturday. And there was a team from Ohio, a team from Florida, you know, and these guys have played all over the place. Division I, played overseas, and, you know, maybe they're just home now in between jobs, or they kind of gave up basketball, but hey, you know, this is the most competitive it's going to get if they're working a regular job. So there's opportunities out there for sure.
I think a great place that we can leave it is just to close out final thoughts. So just regardless of what level a player's at, what's the biggest piece of advice you have for anybody who's just trying to take that next leap forward?
Network. I think that's everything. I mean, I think I said it earlier, but I have friends who played Division III basketball who've played in 30 countries now. I mean, it's just a numbers game. If you knock on 1,000 doors, one has to open. And if you do really well at that job, it's going to lead to the next one. And if you just keep holding yourself like a professional and the locals like you and you do what you're supposed to and you guys win, there's going to always be a job for you. But it starts with how you find that first one and how you network and how you're, even while you're in season, how are we going to find that next job? And are we going to connect with an agent? Are we going to reach out to teams and kind of update people? Are we on LinkedIn? Are we putting our stuff on social media? Going back to using social media, do we look like a professional, or do we look like a college kid who's trying to party and, do stupid little antics?
All right. Taylor Statham, founder of Statham Academy, thank you so much for coming on the Cannon Sports Podcast. I think we better let these girls get back to practice, huh?
Sounds good. Hey, I appreciate you guys having me, and can't wait to see Andrew on here soon.
Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe and follow on Instagram at Cannon Sports TikTok at Cannon Sports Official, and of course, cannonsports.com for all your sporting goods needs.